Mark Rogers TV continuing to talk up the top players in the SEC. We're looking at the top five at each position. We've run through the quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. We now make our way to the big guys up front, the offensive line. And we have done this now 3 consecutive years, looking at the top 10 nationally, the top 5 in the SEC. And by far, this video, the offensive line, gets less hits than any other position. That's understandable. That's predictable, but hey, let's give some love to the big guys up front. As a unit, it could be argued very easily that this is the most important unit on any football team. So these are the guys that make it happen for the glory guys that handle the football. Let's go with the top 5, keeping in mind that 8 of the top 10 players at this position, theoretically, because the first and second team, 10 players, 8 of them have moved on to the NFL and the NFL draft from 2014, including the guy who I think is going to be the best at the next level, La'el Collins, the left tackle out of LSU. Okay, still plenty of talent left in the SEC for this fall. Let's start at number 5 with junior-to-be Dan Skipper, the big, tall guy out of Arkansas, who's planted himself at left tackle for the Hogs and has been a main component in Brett Bielema's reclamation project. 6'9", started 13 games at left tackle in 2014. Keep in mind that this is possibly the best rushing attack in the SEC, of course, with Williams and with Collins, but also Arkansas allowed an SEC best 14 sacks, and of course, at left tackle, Dan Skipper is getting most of the heat from the top pass rushers in the conference, and 14 sacks allowed for the Razorbacks, even though they don't drop back as often as most teams in the conference. Still a very, very impressive statistic. So entering his junior season, Dan Skipper at number 5. At number 4, we go to Athens, Georgia, and a junior-to-be in Greg Pyke out of Georgia. This kid at 6'5" and 320 was a lacrosse star. Football was kind of his second sport. He grew into a great football player, didn't catch the eye of scouts and assistant coaches until late in his high school career, but he turned out to be a second-team All-SEC performer in 2014, voted the most improved player by those Georgia teammates coming out of spring practice in 2014, then showed up with a great season this past fall. Started 13 games at guard, and of course, Georgia led the SEC in rushing at 258 yards per game. We know that they had a couple guys named Gurley and Chubb, but if you check out the tape, like most rushing attacks, most of that yardage is gained downfield. Those guys, even those great running backs, they need a crease, they need something, they need a push. And Greg Pyke at guard, one of the big reasons why for Georgia, second-team All-SEC, we expect him to continue to improve, the most improved player for Georgia in 2014 as voted by his teammates. Now, let's go to number 3. And a senior to be in 2015, Vadal Alexander LSU. He started as a tackle in 2012 as a freshman, was a freshman All-American. They moved him to guard in 2013. He's found a home there. This kid grew up around the LSU football program as a junior high kid. He went to the LSU summer camps, as a lot of these guys do, and he committed himself to LSU and has been a Tiger ever since. He overwhelms opponents with his impressive strength, keeps those feet moving, finishes the block. This taken from a scouting report that this kid is a grinder. He's a kid that loves to hit people and move people off the line of scrimmage. He's 6'6", 340, so you think road grader, but he drops back very well in pass protection. Of course, the move from tackle to guard tells us that he's a better run blocker and a better player in limited space using brute force and technique. Vadal Alexander at number 3 out of LSU. Okay, we go to number 2 and a high riser very quickly, as expected, 5-star Cam Robinson out of the University of Alabama. Very impressive, because consider this. There has not been a left tackle start as a freshman for Nick Saban at Alabama. So you've got to go back to 2006 and the first-round pick Andre Smith as the last left tackle as a freshman to start for the University of Alabama. Of course, Nick Saban took over in 2007. This kid is something else. started every game despite ankle and shoulder issues. So he's a big 5-star guy, but he's not a diva. He played through injuries. He had a high ankle sprain on October 5th against Tennessee. So midway through the season, high ankle sprain. Did he miss any games? No, he missed no games because of that. He got helped out by the bye week, but started against LSU, played extremely well in that game, and then finished off the season despite injuring his shoulder against Auburn, had to leave the Iron Bowl. Cam Robinson is the combination of size, speed, athleticism, technique. At this early stage of his career, entering his sophomore season, Nick Saban said he got better week to week to week. There wasn't one game that he didn't play better than he did the previous game. This kid is flat out stud. He got his first test in his 4th game of the season against Florida. And Dante Fowler, who we're going to see as a top 10 to 15 pick in the NFL draft, could do nothing against Cam Robinson. And this is one of the big reasons why. Forget Lane Kiffin for just a second as offensive coordinator in his first year. Forget what Blake Sims did. A lot of attention and credit needs to go to Cam Robinson as a true freshman playing left tackle for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he just should get, as Nick Saban has said, better and better and better and better. That brings us to the number 1 offensive lineman in the SEC, Laremy Tunsil out of Ole Miss. Let's start with our one knock against Laremy Tunsil. And it's a light one, but he needs to stay on the field a little bit more. He got hurt as a true freshman in 2013, even though he was oh so impressive, starting with that Texas game early in the season that Ole Miss dominated on the road in Austin against Jackson Jeffcoat, one of the better players at his position in the country. Laremy Tunsil showed us that right out of the gate as a true freshman, he could dominate against a very good player. He only allowed 1 sack in 2013, 1 sack in 2014. We'll get back to that in just a second, but concerning the health, he missed time in 2013, missed more time in 2014, actually had to play with pretty much a bum shoulder down the stretch of last season, so he wasn't 100% or anywhere close to 100%. And then, of course, he had to leave the Peach Bowl with a fractured fibula near the end of the second quarter of that debacle against TCU in Atlanta. We hope he'll be back better than ever. Laremy Tunsil, just the complete package, like the Cam Robinson. Hate to make the separation there because these are 2 future NFL first-round picks, top 10 picks. Laremy Tunsil is just amazing. Keep in mind that ESPN, at the conclusion of the regular season last year, listed its top 25 underclassmen. This included guys like Ezekiel Elliott, who tore through everybody, of course, en route to the national championship at running back for Ohio State. Joey Bosa of the Buckeyes, Vernon Hargraves, Nick Chubb, Laquan Treadwell. Who was number 1? Laremy Tunsil, number 1 underclassman according to ESPN following 2014. Again, coming off the fractured fibula, we expect him to be at full force coming up this fall. Maybe not this spring for sure, but this fall for the Ole Miss Rebels. Consider one last stat on Laremy Tunsil. 1 sack given up in 2013, 1 in 2014, and Ole Miss, of course, slides the protection the other way. He's on an island. He's by himself. He's facing typically the best pass rusher for that particular SEC team, which means most likely one of the best in college football each and every week. So that's our top 5 here on Mark Rogers TV, the best 5 offensive linemen in the SEC. Dan Skipper, Arkansas, number 5. We go with Dan Pyke at number 4 out of Georgia. Number 3 is Vadal Alexander out of LSU. Number 2, Cam Robinson after an enormous freshman season for Alabama. And number 1, Laremy Tunsil out of Ole Miss. Would love to hear what you have to say about the big guys up front in the SEC right here on Mark Rogers TV.